The FX5 is the newest product coming out of Sony. We were all kind of expecting an FX3 Mark II, just kind of based on the rumors that were coming out, and ended up being an FX5. I guess they're calling it by branding it this way. I guess they're calling it a new thing. It's got a ton of really interesting features. Through talking to friends, it's some that's really cool and some that's a little disappointing in some areas. But I don't feel like, I don't know. I'm at a point now where it's like, who cares? I feel like I don't think to, like, when I hear about these new cameras, I'm not as excited as much as I think I should be. That could be just because of my time in my career. That could be just because I'm a little fatigued at camera releases currently, just within myself. It could be a variation of things, but I think part of it is I know in the beginning of my career I was pretty excited about cameras, just generally, but I think I was also very much excited about the potential of what that camera could offer, and kind of the brand too, unfortunately. And I feel like for myself there was some attachment of ego, where I feel like because I'm shooting on this specific camera or on this specific brand, I would have more or less success in my career. That, like, oh, if I had this thing, this would be the thing that would take me to the next thing. And I feel like for myself it doesn't matter so long as the job gets done. But I think for a lot of people it's still heavily, heavily tied to their ego. A recent example for me would be that I was bidding for a job for a short film, and I lost it because I didn't have a certain camera. But never in my life have I been specifically denied of a job because they wanted a specific camera brand for seemingly the only reason being that they wanted it. There's been jobs before where I'm asked of a certain brand. I guess one example would be I get asked a lot to shoot on Sony, and that's partially because, you know, their post team is used to a certain color process. They're used to editing a certain file type, and they're just like, all right, we're going to stick with Sony. We want these guys on Sony. It's a very pragmatic reason to kind of go for something like that. And I've even shot a documentary where they requested specifically reds, like, of the DSMC 3 line, so like Komodo, Raptor. And again, it's a very practical reason to want a specific brand. But I think when the thought process of renting a specific camera is because I want it, and not because it's like a genuine benefit to the production visually, because of you know, what sort of budget we have. You know, I think when you're making decisions off of emotion first, I think is kind of to a production's detriment. There's definitely been times where I've rented cameras that ended up being just the wrong choice. I think there's definitely been instances where my eyes were bigger than my appetite, and I rented something very early on in my career, and it just didn't fit the workflow that we had. Camera just didn't have enough support that we needed. You know, we post the production company was kind of more in their infancy in the same way I was, and they couldn't support the post workflow of RAW, which we shot in a RAW codec. And all in all, it was just a bad. It made me realize that it's a really bad way to sort of look at cameras. And I think the correct way, obviously, is to look at it as a tool. And I think when I started to make that shift in my mentality was when the work, I think, really started to improve. There's been times where maybe we did have the budget to afford a certain high-end camera for something, and I ended up going for something that I felt like was a better choice because of the budget we had allocated and because this just sort of fit the type of shoot that we were doing and was supported with the proper amount of manpower that allowed us to sort of succeed. And for this particular job, it was a music video. And I remember wanting a smaller camera specifically because I knew we were going to be running around all these locations and that sort of thing. So we opted for the smaller camera. And I think it worked out in our favor because it allowed the director and I a tremendous amount of flexibility, and it allowed us to kind of be really discreet and sort of sneak shots in there in certain places without having to overly compromise the vision of the video, for example. You want to shoot them the best stuff. You want to be sort of associated with this sort of high-end, upper echelon class of filmmaking. And that's a very valid thing. We all strive, or hopefully we all strive to be, better filmmakers, better in our craft in any capacity. But I think by defining that sort of success as, we need to have the best of the best in order for us to be the best, you are not an inferior filmmaker because of the camera choice that you make on a particular job. You're not less than because you can't afford an Alexa 35. You're not less than because you're not working with a camera that was used on F1 or something. The work is the work. The work is the same, regardless of the brush you're using, regardless of the tool you're using. And it doesn't make you less than because it's not the best gold-plated Rolls Royce or whatever, gold-plated tool or whatever it is. And I think the sooner we can rectify that, or we can sit with that way of thinking, I think it's going to allow us to sort of create images that challenge us and that inspire people, and that will hopefully lead to the budgets where you can afford, the big Alexas or the big, Condors or the big, whatever big tool you want to use. Challenge yourself first and allow yourself to sort of innovate on your own work, and then that'll lead to the bigger toys. I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche or like super generic advice, but that's the reality. That's the reality. The more innovative your work becomes, the more likely you are to be seen by other people who have that same mentality and want to push the envelope of their own work, and that leads to these bigger budgets, that leads to the bigger tools, that leads to you being able to work with all these different cameras and all these different toys that maybe you didn't have access to a few years ago. So I think, just as a general sentiment, if you leave this video with anything, I think just take a breath, focus on what you're making, focus on the quality of what you're making, focus on the skills that you have, focus on the soft and hard skills, and just improve yourself as a human being, improve yourself as a filmmaker, and the right tool will present itself. And if it happens to be one of these high-end cameras, I'm happy for you. But don't believe that the FX5 is going to answer those questions for you. You are the one who's going to answer those questions above anybody else. Hopefully you got something from this. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.